Well, thank you everyone so much for being here to hear about the newly launched LINCC Frameworks Incubators program, which I think we should be calling the LINCcubators program, but maybe we'll see by the end of the session if others agree with me. So I'm going to share my screen, do some introductions, and we'll kick things off. Okay. Fantastic. So my name is Beth Willman, and I'm emceeing this presentation. I'm really presenting the results of a lot of work, a lot of innovation by a large number of people. I'm not one of the people who's invested the most in this, but I get the treat of sharing some of this great information with you. So thank you to Jenno, Jeremy, Rachel, and Andy for really making this launch possible. It's really exciting. So the goal of the meeting today is to spend about 15 minutes. I'll be talking at a high level about what is LINCC Frameworks, what is the incubator program, point you towards some information. And then Jeremy Kubica from CMU, who's the technical lead, the software engineering lead of this project, will give some specific information about what the LINCC Frameworks team is focusing on and how you as community members can best get connected. Or can best take advantage of the resource. So I'll start by defining what does the term LINCC Frameworks even refer to before we get to the incubators. So it stands for the LSSTC Interdisciplinary Network for Collaboration and Computing. And Jenno here, Jenno Sokolowski, is the director of LINCC, and she's present to answer any questions about what I'll be talking about, what Jeremy will be talking about, and the real implementation of frameworks in the incubators. This project the LINCC project overall has 3 pillars: software and tools, training, and community development. The LINCC Frameworks component of that holistic program is the software and tools. Okay, so that's what the incubators is going to be really focusing on today. And the frameworks is being implemented as a collaboration between University of Washington, Carnegie Mellon, and LSSTC to support all of you in the community in developing robust, scalable analysis software, and to be able to do that in collaboration with professional software engineers and data scientists. Schmidt Futures is generously supporting this program. And in order to reach the goals that I'll highlight more specifically in a couple of slides, software development teams are at UW and CMU to develop cross-cutting open source software infrastructure that'll benefit a wide cross-section of the community. So I want to be clear here. LINCC Frameworks is not so that scientists at UW and CMU can do their pet science and have all these resources to do exactly what they want to do or what their collaborators want to do. This entire project was designed for you. It was designed to identify what are the most cross-cutting software needs we anticipate the community may have, obstacles they may face when trying to scale up, for example, calculation that have been done on past data sets to the LSST era. And so we really need engagement from you and participation from you to realize the goals of this project. Vice versa, LINCC Frameworks and the incubators will be able to provide you with resources and access to tools in order to help you reach your scientific goals. So the leadership team for this, I already mentioned their names. We've got Andy Connolly and Rachel Mandelbaum at UW and CMU. They are the co-PIs with Jenno on this particular initiative. And then Jeremy has joined the team, and he is resident at Carnegie Mellon, and you'll be hearing from him soon. Andy and Rachel are available to answer questions, and also they'll be moderating the Q&A and the discussion in the latter half of this session. So, okay, so that's LINCC Frameworks, just in broad brushstroke terms. What is it? What is an incubator? The concept of a software or research incubator isn't a new concept. Specifically for the LINCC Frameworks Incubator, for the LINCcubators, they're designed to provide support, including funding for researchers in the LSST community to collaborate directly with LINCC Frameworks team members to enable new science through focused, intensive collaborative projects together, to apply new tools to precursor data or simulations, to identify and solve new computational challenges, and or to develop open source software to enable near-term science. And again, the overarching goals of LINCC Frameworks, and particularly the incubator connection to you and the community, is to establish long-term software development collaborations that serve the scientific user community and also the LINCC Frameworks team, right? Positive feedback. How can we be sure the LINCC Frameworks team is building and delivering what will best impact the community because of input that will come in through these incubators? And then likewise, how you know that you're going to get out of frameworks what you can get out of it by participating in these incubators. And also to develop software and techniques that serve as a starting point for future LSST data analysis, right? We're only a couple of years away from that. You know, in terms of this being for all of you, as we go through, I also want to go back to a word that Jen has already used, experiment. Even though the concept of an incubator isn't new, and Andy Connolly and the team at University of Washington, for example, has a lot of experience with their eScience Institute running incubators in a different context. This is new for us. This is going to be part of a new team, collaborating with new software engineers. And so the first incubators to be awarded, you're going to be on the front lines of really getting to help us refine this program and help us with the experiment. So when thinking about ideas that you have and when is the right time for you to be proposing, never hesitate, but also for this first round, I encourage teams who are comfortable in the software landscape and who are willing to be part of the experiment, figuring out how this can best work to launch this off. So the process to participate in an incubator is such. The program is going to run for 3 years. 2023 is the first year of that. And, you know, we're going to take in input and do process improvements, implementation improvements through these 3-year period. There'll be approximately 2 incubators running at any single time, in part because, of course, there's a limited number of humans who are on the team who can have these intensive collaborative relationships. We want to make sure that the focused concept is a success. There will be a 2-step open process that will be implemented by the corporation with, in the first year, 4 projects will be selected. And then in years 2 and 3, 6 projects each year will be selected. And over the lifetime of the program, we anticipate at least half of the projects will be led by researchers at LSSTC member institutions. And there's a couple of reasons for that, right? One of the reasons is that there's been a lot of development of this concept over the years from member institutions as part of the corporation, and a lot of in-kind contributions that both the University of Washington and CMU and the corporation and other member institutions have made to make this a reality. And so in order for that to be feasible for this project and future projects, there needs to be some folding back into the community. Also, LSST's member institutions have demonstrated that they have some deep investment in the success of the science with LSST. And so that deep investment demonstrated is part of what helps us be confident that an incubator will be a success and then later impact the broader community. Now, a lot of people's first question is, well, how much money comes if my team gets picked to be an incubator team? Well, about 20 grand, $22,500 for, you know, it's flexible in these sorts of things here. But, you know, from my perspective, I'm the most excited about the 3 months of direct intensive collaboration with software engineers on a compelling science project, because if anybody's tried to, you know, hire up a software engineer or start a new collaboration across those different, you know, technical field lines and scientific lines, it's really hard. And so these cohorts of teams collaborating together across UW and CMU and now engaging with the community is, for me, just the most exciting part of this opportunity. And then computing resources we recognize will be needed for project success. So let's get a little bit more concrete. What might be a specific example of an incubator? So let's say, you know, you're in a science collaboration and there's a novel investigation you already know is going to require some new or ramped up computational tools, and you're selected to be an incubator. Let's say there's a graduate student who this is maybe part of their dissertation work, and that graduate student spends 3 months intensively collaborating with the LINCC Frameworks team. Could be in person, you could use resources to send them to a place, or it could be virtual. Every person's situation will be different. Well, what's expected to be an outcome of an incubator? Here's some examples. There's no one-size-fits-all approach. We're going to figure it out together. Maybe that grad student is a first author on a joint scientific paper, or new computational tools are created inspired by that graduate student's research to serve that graduate student's research that will also serve the broader Rubin community, or existing tools are improved with input from the selected team. Maybe the research team, PI, has results that will help them get future more expanded funding from NSF or other funding sources. We aim for knowledge to be shared between the teams and create foundations for future collaborations through the incubators as well. And so I have this starter website here. Just last night, we went live with a set of information. All of the stuff that I'll be talking about and also that Jeremy will talk about is documented on a website now. If you just go to the landing page for the Frameworks project, it'll be really easy to navigate to more info about the incubators. It's highlighted in yellow right at the top. You dive in. And one thing that you'll see in the call for proposals is details on the anticipated selection criteria for this project. And I list them here. It is demonstration of a desire to engage with LSST, for example, demonstrated by having been a very active member of a science collaboration, being a staff or employed by a member institution, having a well-defined project definition, a clear project definition, the feasibility of the project to be able to be done in the time and resources available and to reach some closure results that will have broader impact, compatibility with the LINCC Frameworks team focus areas, which Jeremy's going to talk more about, and then community impact. What's your plan for sharing the results with the community? What's the likelihood that the work done will also help other research groups or other teams be able to enable their own LSST era science? So with that, Jeremy, just let me know whenever you want me to move ahead for slides. Oh, and I should have said at the very beginning, I'm sorry, Jeremy, if anybody has questions as we go along, feel free to put them in the Zoom chat. You can also direct message them to Rachel Mandelbaum. If you're not comfortable asking a question publicly, she'll keep your name confidential, and we'll have time for open Q&A at the end. I forgot to mention that. Now, Jeremy.
All right. As was mentioned, we're one of the criteria for the first round of incubator selection is to have alignment with the team, the Frameworks team in the current development areas. The team is relatively new. We're ramping up. We've picked 4 areas that we're focusing development effort on now. And in an effort to have the incubators get off to a quick start, we're looking to try to make sure those match. That constraint's going to be relaxed potentially down the road, depending on what sort of interest we see and what sort of projects are proposed. But right now, we're trying to find something that matches what the team is already pretty ramped up on. As I said, we're working on 4 main areas at the moment that we're investing in terms of software. So if we go, they're laid out here. I'll go into detail for each one in the next slide, on the next slides. So the first big one that we're looking at is frameworks for querying and analyzing catalog data at very large scales. So this is especially anything to do with spatial queries. So probably the clearest example of this is cross-matching 2 catalogs. You have 10 billion objects coming off of the Rubin catalog, and then you have 1 billion objects off another catalog, and you want to do cross-matching. How do you do it efficiently? And the frameworks efforts include both developing new libraries and testing for the partition logic for the actual individual files, all the way up through building infrastructure to make parallelization and optimization of the spatial queries possible. So within this pretty broad context, this is one of the projects we hope will help a lot of different areas. There's a lot of potential incubator projects that we could accommodate, from running novel spatial analysis over existing catalogs to trying cross-matching existing catalogs and seeing if we can find something interesting there. The idea being use historical data so we can start testing the software, but in such a way that it could lead to novel scientific insight. If we could go to the next slide. The second area that we're working is in time series. And so the goal here is to build a flexible framework for scalable analysis of time series. Like the spatial analysis work we're doing, a lot of this focuses on the distributed computation and scalability questions. Right now, our efforts are focused on 2 specific use cases of period finding and structure calculation. But for incubator projects, other potential scientific applications of time series, including different features that we might want to compute, different algorithms, but generally looking at how can we take some sort of time series computation and scale it up over a large data set. So one thing that would work particularly well here is anybody who's has an interesting analysis they want to run and it just doesn't scale to what they want to run. That might be a potentially good match. Again, one of the key criteria we're looking for, and this will be the case in everything, is precursor data sets that we can use to actually test it out. Next. So PhotoZ is another area that we're working. We've been helping the Rail team, which is part of the Dark Energy Science collaboration, has created this Rail package, which is a openly developed, public and flexible software package for doing all sorts of great PhotoZ work, including computing models, comparing models, computing metrics. Our early activity has been really to help contribute to the functionality of this for the cross-science collaboration use cases. And there's a lot of room for additional expansion. Potential incubator projects we see matching in well with this are pretty varied. New metrics, new models, anything for astrophysical use cases that aren't currently being explored with Rail, through to like comparing PhotoZ distributions across multiple catalogs. And then one more slide. And then the last area we're working is the detection and characterization of minor planets. Again, this effort is building off an existing software base, the KB-MOD software, to particularly look at TNOs. But in terms of incubator projects, potential matches here include extending this or applying this to look for TNOs and extending it to maybe different types of operations or interest, all the way through to expanding the type of minor planets, moving object questions that we ask in general. I think there's a pretty broad range here. One activity that we've discussed is identifying activity within images of minor planets, so things like comets. All right. I think that's an overview. I'm happy to go into a lot more detail of those during the question and answer period.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jeremy. And before I hand things over to Rachel, if that's okay, to moderate a discussion and a Q&A, I would like to invite the members of the LINCC Frameworks team who are on the line, and I think there's a number of you, to just go ahead and say hello in the chat. Introduce yourself. I know there's about 70 people online, so raising hands and things might be a little bit hard, but I'd love to see some of you say, hi, I'm Melissa, I'm Nevin. Nevin, I see your hand, you're not typing and introducing yourself, just so people get a sense of the diversity of voices and sorts of experience that are on right now. And I see a group of 3 folks at least who are in the room in the University of Washington Dirac Institute. I do see you waving. Oh, I see Carl there. Anyway, please feel free to drop a line and say hi. And again, anybody that has questions or comments, feel free to put them in the chat directly. I already saw a direct question to me, and these slides are already posted, in fact, on the Incubators page. I think they have the exact content that we just went through, Jeremy and I, except for the URL on one of the slides, but you will be at that URL if you're seeing the slides online. Okay, thank you, Melissa. Okay, go, Jeremy.
Along those lines, I should mention the LINCC Frameworks page has been updated with a more current view of the projects we're taking on, including links to things like source code repositories and wikis. So there's more information available there than had been available previously, if people are interested in learning more. I feel like a lot of introductions right now are happening in chat. I almost feel like I should be reading them off. I'm sure everybody can actually read them on their own though, but thank you for everybody introducing yourself.
Yeah, thank you very much. And again, I say this often in different meetings like this, having a history as a liberal arts college professor, I have a deep capacity for, awkward silences and waiting for input. And so, we went through a lot of material really quickly. I'm thrilled with how many people are on the line, even though we have a good representation from the team. We have at least 50 people on the line who are not directly connected with the frameworks team. I would love to hear from you what you're thinking. Even if you want to just say, hi, I'm Beth. I love near field cosmology. Jeremy, I was really interested in what you said about cross-matching. I'm going to think more about that. Or if you think, I don't understand how this could work for me. Do I need to know Python? We would love any kind of comment or questions that you are thinking right now. And let's start with Meg. And Will, I'm going to put you on notice that if nobody steps up after Meg, I'm going to ask you for a comment as the chair of the Science Collaboration Coordinators. Meg, please start us off. And now be quiet now that I've poked people, and Rachel will take over.
Hi, I'm Meg Schwam. I'm a lecturer at Queen's University Belfast and co-chair of the Solar System Science Collaboration. So I see a lot of the technical feasibility, but I know that if I might need a front-end web developer, or I might need someone who's a back-end web developer, or I'm thinking someone who's a back-end engineer, or someone who does full stack, I know what those terms are. But I didn't see much of that on the descriptions of the software engineers. I presume they all know Python. I don't know if they all know MongoDB, or they're all database experts or not. And so I'm wondering, is that information going to be available so that I know that, like, if I'm asking for something that has web in it and I'm thinking I want Rail or Ruby on Rails, or I want JavaScript or something, to be able to visualize that there is someone who's capable of that, but I don't know when it means somebody works at Amazon. And so I'm wondering, how much detail do I have to say or think about in that context? Because I see there's a lot of developers who've done a lot of experience, but I don't necessarily know what that experience means, other than maybe I assume everyone knows Python. So I'm just wondering if there can be a little bit more context of what are the skill sets? Is that going to be labeled or described so that if you don't know what a full stack engineer is, that can be explained to someone who doesn't know that jargon?
Yeah, I think we can provide some additional context on skill sets, and that's something I can go back to the team, and we've got a team page where I think we can provide that information as well. In general, I don't think we're going to be able to exhaustively list off everything that people know. During the application process for this, one of the things, the software engineers will be involved. So if there's a description saying, yeah, we want to do something with a front end, we'll be able to translate that into, okay, does it match our skill set? But it's a really good point. Having more of that up front would actually is something we can do.
Thanks, because it would be helpful, because if you say, oh, we really don't have front-end web experience, and I should think about how not to create a UI that, or GUI that doesn't need that. So yeah, I think if the general strokes, but I fully understand that you can't give everyone's expertise, but maybe the broad strokes or key things, that would be great.
Yeah, and so for for that specific case, because I have a feeling it's going to be something that comes up a lot, front-end development is not something that we are particularly focusing on for the early incubators. At least there are some people in the team who have experience with it, but we're really looking at the computational scalability, distributed processing, more of the back-end type work, the algorithmic type work to scale up the software right now. So those would be the best matching projects.
If I could just add, I think it would be great if we can put some additional information like that up front in the materials on the website. I also wanted to add just something that was deep down in the materials, so it didn't make sense for Beth to cover, but could be useful in this context. We do have an LSSTC Slack workspace channel, LINCC Incubator Help, where people could ask questions if there's some information that's not on the website that they feel would be useful, and we'd of course try to update materials if appropriate, or at least answer for in the channel. And there will also be weekly office hours leading up to the proposal deadline for questions like that. Would it be all right if I go to one of the anonymous questions?
Fine by me.
I got an anonymous question. Could somebody submit multiple proposals? Jenna, I don't know. Do you want to comment?
Why not?
You know, as someone who writes a lot of proposals, sometimes that's shooting yourself in the foot, spreading yourself too thin, but there's no rule against it.
Okay. How about, looks like Rachel Street is next.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for taking the question. I'm wondering how much the programs in question have to depend upon the existing LSST architecture, software architecture, that is. And can you give us a bit more information about what exactly that expectation is and what the architecture is that we'd be dealing with?
So right now there's no requirements that it depends on the architecture. All the software is being developed so that way it will work with the Rubin Science platform and build on top of that. But a lot of the early development we're actually doing is, you know, reading raw FITS files or Parquet files and loading them in, and not necessarily requiring the butler or those data channels. So for proposals, both should be considered. If there is data that is sitting in Butler and you're like, I want to go through RSP, that is a great thing, you know, that we want to enable. But if you're like, I do not have data in that format, you know, putting that in would be a high overhead. That shouldn't make you say, no, that I can't do this, because we still do want to stress test the algorithms as well.
That's good to know. Thank you very much.
Hey, Eric.
Yeah, my question is, if we have an idea that seems to fit with this program well, but it doesn't obviously fit within one of the 4 focus areas that's been mentioned, should we wait for a later call when the focus areas might be different, or describe it anyway and give you a sense of how it relates to the focus areas that are there?
I can have a go. Rachel, do you want to answer?
I think we were all playing chicken.
Rachel, why don't you start?
I'm happy to try answering as well, but yeah.
Jeremy, why don't you start? And
I would say describe how it relates, because how we're thinking about the areas, what I can present in 1 or 2 slides is probably presents only a slice. What we might say is feedback coming back might be that, okay, yeah, it doesn't really match now, but it also will help us keep in mind of the type of work that we could help enable further down the line. And really, throughout the entire existence of the LINCC Frameworks team, we're going to be looking for how can we have maximum impact and in helping astronomers do their science. So getting that sort of view is also very useful.
Thank you.
Will?
Yeah, sort of almost a follow on from Eric's question. Yeah, I like the idea of feedback to say, does this area match adequately the 4 areas of focus that have been outlined? Is it envisaged that that kind of interaction will take place before the proposal deadline, which I believe is in 1 month, or is that something that happens after step 1 of the short proposal plus?
So
CVs?
I will be hosting weekly office hours for the incubators, where I'm more than happy to brainstorm with people about how an idea fits in with the 4 areas and whether or not it does. I can't say that in that amount of time we'll be able to get to everybody and to give comprehensive feedback. I don't want to promise that, because obviously, you know, if 100 people are like, hey, how does it work? Yeah. There's a limited amount of bandwidth. But there can, you know, I do hope to provide some amount of feedback ahead of time.
And just to clarify, ahead of time means ahead of is it a February deadline for proposals?
Yes, the office
right?
hours start next Thursday. So yeah, it would be ahead of the February, and I believe it is the February deadline. I don't remember the exact date.
Okay. If I may, Rachel, I have a related question. So it sounds like this first cycle is going to be getting the program off the ground, and it's good to see there's detail about, I think, what you're looking for. Will the February deadline be the only proposal call this year, or will there be another one later in the year? Do we know that yet?
Yes, I can answer. We will, since we want to have 3 sessions in this, the next 12 months, I guess, starting from the first one, we will have at least 1 or 2 more calls this year within 12 months from now. So the first one will probably be in less than 6 months from the February call.
So if a team or if a collaboration has an idea, but they're not sure they have the bandwidth to maybe make it into a proposal by February, it sounds like it would still be useful for them to set aside like a hackathon or something between now and let's say July to work on a proposal for the second call. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay, thanks for confirming that.
Meg, go ahead, please.
So I guess related to that, there's a couple of things of the short deadline. Some places do require full budgets, even if you say it's a phase 1. How are you going to help those people? I'm one of them. For example, my institution doesn't care if it's phase 1, they want budgets because they tally up, you applied for money, even if you didn't effectively. And so 4 weeks is very short for some places that will require that it goes through their full process, their full system. But also just thinking, again, people are teaching and have varying loads, that not knowing when the next one's coming doesn't may be something to think about of how, if you can tell us sooner whether there will continue to be these 1-month deadlines or whether you're going to give more time as this continues, because some people will have time over the summer, but like, you know, it started a teaching term, so somebody who's more teaching might not. So can you talk a little bit about what's the support right now, and then how do you envision the next call? Are we going to get a 1-month notice, or is it longer? A little bit of that detail may be helpful.
I can answer that, or Rachel. Yeah, this will probably be the only call that has such a short turnaround time. We did that because we prioritized getting things going. But after this, it should be pretty clear that we'll be able to announce future proposal deadlines with more lead time. And after the first 2, when we see how long everything takes us and how many proposals come in, we should be able to extend the schedule even further, perhaps even laying out the schedule of deadlines for the next several years.
Thanks, Jenna. Will?
Yeah, just to put a bow on that, I think that would be very helpful to know. And in fact, yeah, not to tell you how to run your website, but it might be good to have some indication very soon on the website to say that there will be, I think you said 2 or 3 more calls this year, just so that groups have a burning idea, but they underwater teaching, to pick a random example, don't end up sort of stressing to try to get stuff done by February. I think that would be a big help in both directions.
Thanks, Will.
Just a recommendation.
Thanks. This is really helpful. You know, we're hoping to learn from this round how it goes and how to support the community through this process. I had my hand up because I have an anonymous question. I also wanted to flag a quite related question in the chat from Canute, who asked how many total calls do we expect to have? So I could start by saying, I think in the spirit of we're learning how this goes and how the community responds. I think it's hard to say, you know, in the long term, 3 years from now, whether we'd be making a call and trying to, you know, call for a 3-month period versus a call for, you know, multiple rounds at a time. So I think it's a little difficult to predict, but just to go back to the comments on the slide, this will be a 4-year program with 6 teams selected per year. So there will definitely be a decent number of calls in future, and it's hard to give any more detail. Jenna, did you have any further thoughts on that?
No, I agree with what you just said.
If I could just ask one of the anonymous questions now, is the amount of funding that Beth mentioned after overheads, and is that amount of funding enough to cover 3 months salary for the recipient plus travel? Jenna, I don't know if you feel able to.
That's the total amount. So there's no extra overhead added on top of that. And it can, whether it covers a certain salary for 3 months depends on your salary. It might cover a grad student, it might cover just part of 1 month for a well-paid faculty member. It's up to you to decide the best way to use those resources.
If I could do one more anonymous question, is it open to US-based teams only? I can do that one. No. Teams outside the US are welcome. If you have any other questions, I encourage you to raise your hand or continue to send things to me to ask for you. Francois, go for it.
So I'm thinking, because one of the goals is to create things that are useful for the entire community, maybe we could also create a channel where people can exchange ideas across various science collaboration, various groups, in order to form joint proposals that would be stronger for this call event. So some sort of brainstorming channel of ideas to create proposals. Just a comment.
Sorry, Jenna, or does anybody else want to comment on that? I think that's an interesting idea. Kostya?
Hello, I'm Kostya Malanchev from University of Illinois. What kind of projects would you like to prioritize? New software development, or speeding up or integrate some existing development, some existing software, or new features for link supported software? So what are the focus of the project?
I would say all of those fall into reasonable focus. We're in terms of the actual technical questions being asked, we're not trying to limit it. We are for the first set of proposals, as I said, focusing mostly on the 4 application areas, just because that's where the team has had a chance to ramp up and has some good momentum going. And we want to be able to use that to make sure the incubators get off to a really fast start. But beyond that, it could be something someone says, I have this algorithm that's, I'm trying and it doesn't scale, and I want to see it, and we can fit it into one of the frameworks and it would work really well there. It could be as simple as I have this novel analysis I want to run that nobody's ever tried before on this data set, and I think one of those packages can run it. I have a new set of features that I'd like to compute over one of these data sets. And I think, so it can be novel software, it can be existing software that we are looking to augment or incorporate or wrap. It can be pretty wide. See, Rachel, that's good.
Oh, it's a new question. So if there was any follow-up on that, I don't mean to discourage. Kostya, did that cover it, or?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, great. I'm going to ask 2 questions for others. The first is, are you going to encourage collaboration between teams? Because in some areas, like PhotoZ, there are many groups interested.
I don't know who wants to answer that. Like, collaboration is great between teams if people want to do that. We also don't want to require it and say, okay, we're going to introduce 10 other collaborators to this. So really, that would be something that should be conveyed in the proposal of, hey, I think this could be a wider effort, bring in more people, or here's the project presented. So it's, again, there's a range of flexibility on our side. And
Jenna, do you mind if I add something?
Go for it.
Great. And so I think this question is another great example of things that will be learned along the way. You can imagine, I don't anticipate there being an effort from us who are going to be implementing this from our end to either require or to actively facilitate collaborations. But when we take a look at the applications that come in, let's say 2 of them are from different teams asking to do very similar things. It may be that during the proposal review process, I could imagine it might make sense to say, okay, well, if we had to pick, we would pick this one, but it might be mutually beneficial for the teams to work together and collaborate for whatever reason. And so I anticipate being able to answer that more concretely only after seeing some examples and how proposers may react to suggested approaches to competing applications.
If I could ask another anonymous question, I do want to encourage people though to raise your hands if you have a question, and I'll intersperse them. Another question was for institutes or countries where they may not be able to take summer salary for students or staff researchers because of the funding structures or whatever. Are there any suggestions on how the incubator funding could be used to engage junior researchers or students? Otherwise they can use grants like maybe for travel, hardware, publications, but any suggestions on that about engaging junior researchers?
Could you clarify the question? Does maybe you could clarify in chat to Rachel. For example, do you mean junior researchers at your own institution? Because if that's the question, I would say that's absolutely within bounds of what you could include in your proposal. And I think we're interested to hear the different types of resources that people at different types of institutions identify as being the most helpful for them to accomplish the goals of the incubator and your own scientific goals.
Yeah, I think that I got to follow up with a little more context that, if they don't already have a postdoc there, say, then a minimum contract for a postdoc would be longer than an incubator period, so they couldn't get somebody new on that. And so I think that was part of the context for the question.
Maybe I can just say a little something. Just is, we want to be, we're fairly flexible. So in the announcement, I think we mentioned the PI receiving the funding and have some examples of them funding a student, say, or someone at their own institution, but we're quite flexible. If there's something that works more effectively for you, you can identify another member of the team that some funding that helps them engage in your project and this work in some way. I think we will be open to that, more open, say, than some very strictly defined federal programs. We have a little more ability to be flexible. So communicate with us, and I will sometimes, for example, be with Jeremy on the office hours. If you have a sort of a question that leans in that direction, I might be able to address your particular situation.
Great. That could indeed be helpful for, everybody's situation is different. And so sometimes the discussion is going to be what's needed. There's a question in the Zoom chat to everyone, but it's probably worth pointing out this request to clarify what kind of computational resources will be available, along with some of the other things we've talked about, like the team skill sets.
Yeah, so right now we have we have a notebook server called LINCC that is set up to work on a commercial cloud. We're currently in the process of looking at which cloud that is deployed on, but we have cycles on that can be used for that. In addition, there's additional computational resources that we have from the Pittsburgh Supercomputing Center that we can look at for larger workloads, or if people want to test in a high performance computing environment.
Meg?
I wanted to ask about the 2 stages of this. So it sounds like the second stage of these interviews is only feasibility. So I guess you list a lot of criteria for how it's selected, but it's not clear to me how the March interviews fit in, because it's like, well, you're going to tell us about if it's feasible. So does that mean a feasibility score is estimated from the discussions with the software developers and the team, and then you take all the rest from the proposal? Or how is that, like, how is that all being evaluated, such as that if every project, say every project was feasible, it won't be, but maybe most of them are, how are you deciding between that? And how, like, what is the March criteria that goes into that March interview? Like, how is that weighted? Because some, right, is it like, you know, is it a phase 2 where yes, your science is all, like, how you express your science verbally is also evaluated? Just explaining maybe how that all fits together with these other criteria and the written components would be helpful.
Andy, do you want to say anything about that based on your experience at eScience Institute?
Sure. For us, the second round is, so the eScience Institute has run incubators for a number of years, and so the way we've been planning these out has been based on our experiences from that. So the second round has mainly clarifications associated with the proposals. It's hard to really write down what is needed in 2 pages to actually implement a piece of software. To better understand areas that are just not clear in the proposal about the you know, how you would actually do that development, what skills are actually needed within the team. Because if there's a proposal that, as Jeremy was talking about earlier, requires front end or UX design expertise, and that's not within the team, we want to be able to make sure that we can actually be successful for the proposers. And so that's what a lot of the kind of the second round, in terms of the kind of the feasibility aspects, to make sure that it's something that can be done in you can make progress in 3 months, that we have the skill sets that can actually match to what's needed by the proposal, and to better understand, you know, how would you actually do that development process, you know, from a software engineering perspective.
Thanks for taking that one, Andy. I'm going to just pause for a moment here and say that Andy's going to run the rest of the Q&A because I have to leave to teach my class. So if anybody has any questions they'd like asked for them, please send them directly to Andy Connolly. I will not be on there, so you won't be able to find me. And I believe I've covered all of the anonymous questions that I received so far, but if you sent me one and I didn't ask it, I really apologize for missing it. Please send it to Andy. And thanks everyone for the great questions. And I look forward to interacting with all of you, hopefully in the context of incubators.
Thanks, Rachel.
Can I actually also add to Andy's answer? I think there was something that I sensed from Meg's question. I just want to address the second stage of the process is not like a job interview. This is where our goal is to make this a friendly process. That could be an email back and forth, a conversation, just to help you and help our LINCC Frameworks team make sure that they have all the information needed to make sure that projects will succeed and that projects are selected. The ones that are selected are ones that will have a really good chance of succeeding and being beneficial and compatible with the team. So, and they might help you, if it doesn't work out in one particular session, set you up for a very good project in a following session. So this should be hopefully a friendly process.
I just add one aspect to that as well, is our hope is that the feedback that you get would actually be beneficial for the project as well, in terms of getting the perspective of someone who writes software or develops software, to get some understanding of some of the, you know, what are the steps that are needed to realize the project. So we're hoping that that whole discussion will actually be of use to people who are actually applying. Will, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks, Andy. I think this question's for you. If you can answer questions as well in your new capacity as MC for the meeting. I'm trying to get a handle on how things work with collaborations that are already in place who then want to apply for this, or you know, big teams of which maybe a small subset would actually be interacting with the incubator. Based on your experiences with previous incubators, do you have any suggestions or guidance on sort of what typical team size is effective in a situation like this, like the scope of the collaborations that might successfully approach a program like this?
That's a really good question. I think it's it depends very much on the team and how they actually interact and work. Some teams are just large teams and they break up small amounts of work. My expectation would be that the actual work that a teamwork does during the 3 months with the software engineers is very hands-on, and so it may end up being you could have a large team, but you identify a small number, maybe a few. I think typically with the e-science groups, it have been anything from a couple of people who are working actively and then brought that information back to their labs and discussed it, so that the information actually propagated through to a larger group, to 4 or 5 people actually engaging on a 1 to 2 day basis in terms of how they worked on projects.
Okay.
I think it really depends on how the teams who are proposing actually function. I think one of the aspects that have been really successful on the e-science side for incubators was you need to have someone who is prepared to invest, a couple of days a week. This is their main focus, and so you have to actually engage deeply with the engineering team to actually make progress. If that's helpful.
That is helpful, thank you. And again, I apologize, I've not fully digested until posted yet, but is that something that the program expects to evaluate in stage 1 or in stage 2 of the proposals then, in terms of likelihood of success? Or
I think what we would do is we would evaluate, and maybe Jeremy can jump in, we would evaluate more the likelihood of success of the project, and less of how the team would interact, because I'm not sure that we would have any real insight into that until we'd actually worked with the group.
okay. So just for hypothetical, sorry, Jeremy, go ahead.
I was just agreeing. Yes.
Okay. I'm just imagining if there were sort of 3 groups that all do time series analysis that in a specific way would match with the existing time series analysis area of focus that you've shown. If the expectation is that those groups would talk to each other before applying, or if there might be 3 applications that would come in, and then in the review process, you would notice, oh, these 3 are similar. And I guess into that sort of collaboration versus competition versus duplication issue, I suppose, as well. But it sounds from the discussion that that's something that will be learned in cycle 1. But I wonder if you have any thoughts on that.
Maybe Beth has some thoughts on this. My own personal opinion is that I don't think we want to get into a place where we are telling you to collaborate with someone else, right? It is, these are projects driven by the individual teams. And if you have a team, I don't think we see it as our place to say, you have to collaborate with someone else. If we saw information and both teams agreed to be open to discuss it, maybe we would put teams in contact with each other. But I think we're not trying to force collaborations.
Yeah, I agree with that, Andy. That's consistent with what I hope I communicated in my earlier answer.
Yeah.
Is that we may identify opportunities, but not to force it.
Okay, do we have any more questions? I know we're coming up on the hour and we've covered a lot of questions. Looking in the direct messages, I don't see any. So if you have a direct a question that you want to send me, please do so now. Or
we want to make sure Nevin has a chance to announce the last or the next tech talk before we wrap up. But I do see one more question came in. So maybe Andy, do you want to take that question? Then Nevin will close us out.
Yes, let's do that. Aaron, you're up.
Yeah. So Jeremy had mentioned about cross-matching catalogs is one of the focus areas system. But does that also mean if we need to develop some tools that can uniformly process data from LSST and from a different mission, say I want to do a spectroscopic follow-up of something, is that also within the scope? This goes a little beyond cross-matching.
Yeah, no, the framework we are working on goes beyond cross-matching and is a scalable analysis framework. Cross-matching is just a very concrete use case, but things beyond that, other analyses are definitely fall within scope.
Okay, so it's not just limited to LSST or Ruby. Yeah, got it.
Well, for testing, we are happy to look at two legacy data sets and work on those together, or multiple legacy data sets as well. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Nevin, do you want to close it out?
Yes, I can say just a few words. So as you're probably aware, this is the channel that we usually use for Tech Talks, and we will have the next one in 2 weeks. At the same time, first day in 2 weeks, it will be Rachel Street and Josh Bloom, I think, who will be talking about Sky Portal and the Tom Toolkit. And Rachel is actually here. So maybe Rachel, if you want to say just a sentence or two, what you will be talking to us in 2 weeks.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Yeah, the plan is to talk about systems that will help manage all the flood of data from many different sources that we will be getting in the era of responding to LSST discoveries. How you're going to use software tools to collate all that information and to run follow-up programs, including making observations with a range of different observing resources. There are 2 packages that for that purpose that we're going to present. That's the Tom Toolkit and Sky Portal. So I hope you'll all join us for that presentation in a couple of weeks' time. See you then.
Andy, that's all I had.
Great. I'm going to return it to Beth to close it all out.
I think we've done a good job of changing MC roles throughout the last hour. I'm so happy. Thank you all for coming, and thank you all for asking a lot of awesome questions that will help us continue to strengthen this program and partner with you to realize our goals. Thank you, Jeno, Jeremy, Rachel, and Andy, and of course, Nevin, for being the host of not just this talk today, but the entire Link Tech Talk series. So have a great day. Don't hesitate to reach out to any of us if you follow-up questions, and stay tuned for updates to the website and that YouTube recording being posted. Ciao, everybody.
Thank you.